forward, even if I don't get every single thing that I want. But here's the point that I made to John Boehner and Mitch McConnell. Bipartisanship can't be that I agree to all the things that they believe in or want, and they agree to none of the things I believe in and want, and that's the price of bipartisanship, right? But that's sometimes the way it gets presented. Mitch McConnell said something very nice in the meeting about how he supports our goals on nuclear energy and clean coal technology and more drilling to increase oil production. Well, of course he likes that. That's part of the Republican agenda for energy, which I accept. And I'm willing to move off some of the preferences of my party in order to meet them halfway. But there's got to be some give from their side as well. That's true on healthcare, that's true on energy, that's true on financial reform. That's what I'm hoping gets accomplished at the summit.
Senate bills can't pass anymore?
What I agree with is that the public has soured on the process that they saw over the last year. I think that actually contaminates how they view the substance of the bills. I think it is important for all these issues to be aired so that people have confidence if we're moving forward on such a significant part of the economy as healthcare, that there is complete transparency and all these issues have been adequately vetted and adequately debated. And this gives an opportunity not just for Democrats to say, here's what we think we should do, but it also gives Republicans a showcase before the entire country to say, here's our plan, here's why we think this will work. And one of the things that John Boehner and Mitch McConnell both said is they didn't think that the status quo was acceptable. And that's right there promising. That indicates that if all sides agree that we can't just continue with business as usual, then maybe we can actually get something done.
Mr. President,
All right.
One of the reasons Anthem Blue Cross says that it's raising its premiums is because so many people are dropping out of individual coverage because the economy is so bad.
Yeah.
And that leaves the people in the pool who are people who need medical care driving up costs. One of the reasons why businesses are not expanding right now, in addition to some of the credit issues you've talked about, at least according to business leaders, is they say there's an uncertainty of what they need to plan for because of the energy bill, because of health care. That's what they say. I'm not saying it's true or not, but that's what they say. What do you say when you hear that?
Well, I think that the biggest uncertainty has been we just went through the worst recession since the Great Depression. And people weren't sure whether the financial system was going to melt down and whether we were going to tip into a endless recession. So let's be clear about the sources of uncertainty in terms of business investment over the last several years. A huge contraction, trillions of dollars of losses in people's 401ks. People have a lot of debt coming out of the previous decade that they still haven't worked out. The housing market losing a whole bunch of value. So the good news is that where we were contracting by 6%, the economy is now growing by 6%. The CEOs I talk to are saying they are now making investments, and I anticipate that they're going to start hiring at a more rapid clip. What I've also heard is them saying that we would like to feel like Washington is working and able to get some things done. There are two ways of interpreting the issue of uncertainty. One way would be to say, well, you know what, we'll just go back to what we were doing before on, let's say, the financial markets. We won't have the regulations that we need. We won't make any changes in terms of too big to fail. That will provide certainty until the next financial crisis. That's not the kind of certainty I think that the financial markets need. The kind of certainty they need is for us to go ahead and agree on a bipartisan effort to put some rules of the road in place so that consumers are protected in the financial markets, so that we don't have banks that are too big to fail, that we have ways of winding them down and protecting the overall system without taxpayer bailouts. That requires legislation. The sooner we can get that done, the better. The same would be true when it comes to health care. A lot of CEOs that I hear from will say, boy, we'd like you to get health care settled one way or another, but they will acknowledge that when they open up their latest invoice for their premiums and they find out that those premiums have gone up 20% or 25%, that's the kind of uncertainty that also tamps down business investment. So, I guess my answer would be this. The sooner the business community has a sense that we've got our act together here in Washington and can move forward on big, serious issues in a substantive way without a lot of posturing and partisan wrangling, I think the better off the entire country is going to be. I absolutely agree on that. What I think is important is not to buy into this notion that is perpetrated by some of the business interests that got a stake in this, who are fighting financial reform, for example, to say, boy, we'd be doing fine if we just didn't try to regulate the banks. That, I think, would be a mistake.
Just to play devil's advocate on that, a small business, let's say, not somebody who's going to be affected by the regulatory reform, small business, you have proposed, you would acknowledge, a bold agenda. And a small business might wonder, I don't know how the energy bill is going to affect me, I don't know how the healthcare reform bill is going to affect me, I better hold off on hiring.
Yeah, the small business I talk to, and I've been talking to a lot of them as I've been traveling around the country over the last several months, their biggest problem is right now they can't get credit out of their banks. So they're uncertain about that. And they're still uncertain about orders. You know, do they just have enough customers to justify them doing more? It's looking better at this point, but that's not the rationale for people saying I'm not hiring. Let me put it this way. Most small businesses right now, if they've got enough customers to make a profit and they can get the bank loans required to boost their payroll, boost their inventory, and sell to those customers, they will do so. Okay. Let's see. Let's get a print guy here, David.
So you heard McConnell talk about nuclear power, offshore drilling, free trade. That's a lot of Republican stuff.
Yeah.
Is your party going to go for that if you decide to support that kind of package?
You know, I think that on energy, there should be a bipartisan agreement that we have to take a both-and approach rather than either-or approach. What do I mean by that? I am very firm in my conviction that the country that leads the way in clean energy, solar, wind, biodiesel, geothermal, that country is going to win the race in the 21st century global economy. So we have to move in that direction. What is also true is that given our energy needs in order to continue economic growth, produce jobs, make sure our businesses are competitive around the world, that we're going to need some of the old traditional energy sources as we're developing these new ones and ramping them up. Right? So we can't overnight convert to an all-solar or an all-wind economy. That just can't happen. We're going to have needs in these traditional sources. And so the question then is, are we going to be able to put together a package that includes safe, secure nuclear power, that includes new technologies so that we can use coal, which we have in abundance and is very cheap, but it often is adding to our greenhouse gases? Can we find sequestration technologies that clean that up? Can we identify opportunities to increase our oil and natural gas production in a way that is environmentally sustainable? And that should be part of a package with our development of clean energy. And my hope is that that my Republican friends, but also Democrats, say to themselves, let's be practical and let's do both. Let's not just do one or the other. Let's do both. Over time, I think the transition is going to be more and more clean energy, and over time, fossil fuels become less prominent in our overall energy mix. But we've got to do both.
How confident are you there'll be that kind of consensus for that double-edged approach?
I am just a eternal optimist, and so it's the right thing to do. And all I can do is just to keep on making the argument about what's right for the country and assume that over time, people, regardless of party,